Hello, I'm Camilla Ryan, PhD student and nature nerd, and welcome back to another episode of Welcomewatch. I'm here today with Dr Iain Barr, who is our resident, I would say, general expert on pretty much everything that moves and doesn't move at UEA. But today he's here to talk to us about our small mammals. Hello, Iain.
Hello.
So tell us about some of the mammals you might find on campus.
Well, we've got about 33 different mammal species on campus. We've got some that live here just in the day, or you can see them during the day. Some that live here, but only come out at night. So we can talk about them in those contexts. And the students could maybe see the ones during the day fairly easily. Things like rabbits they'll see every day. Things like foxes they might see just in the morning or in the evening. But if they really want to get the full UEA sort of mammal experience, it's the bats they should be kind of thinking about. And you can come out here, stand by the lake, and you can see one of our 11 species of bats. And in some places you can see maybe per hour, you can see maybe 400 or 500 bats flying by. And you can sort of stand there and just experience their wings going by. But also you can use bat detectors to actually hear them echolocate as they go around. And they're here because of the vast insect life that's helped by the lake and helped by the river.
And you mentioned bat detectors, and I happen to know you have a whole store of them, and you're very keen for people to come and borrow them and actually use them to enjoy the fantastic bat life we have, because it is, as you've described, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's listed in the Mammals of Britain guide as the best place in England to see nocturnal bats, for example. So they live just by the registry and over by Blackdale Plantation, just not too far away. Big roost, and they come over here and you can see them flying around during the night. You can see the Daubenton's bat flying over the river. And yes, we've got guides, we've got bat detectors that people can borrow just in buying. Yeah.
So you mentioned Daubenton's bats, and am I right in saying that they are generally found around water because of the way they feed?
They are, but they also roost in the buildings. So we found one just last week roosting in the buildings just by estates over there. But they live in drains and in trees by the lakes, where they come out and they feed. And they actually got a big tail membrane and really, really hairy, hobbit-like feet that they use to scoop up insects from the water surface. And then they eat them using their tail membrane as a kind of plate. And they fly along and they kind of munch away the insects they catch off the water surface. Fascinating creatures.
That's evolution at its best, right there, giving you, plate, crockery and cutlery all in one.
Absolutely, yeah, and the food source supplied by the water, absolutely.
So, where else would you find bats roosting? You mentioned drains for Daubentons, but where else might you find them roosting? So
trees are really important for bats, and that's why UEA we've got a programme of looking at the trees and trying to leave dead wood on trees, so standing dead wood we call it. And that's brilliant for biodiversity in general, but it's good for woodpeckers. They make the holes and the bats move into those holes after woodpeckers have finished. And the green woodpeckers up by the registry, if you look up at the sweet chestnut grove that there is there, you'll see green woodpecker holes all the way over all of the trees, and that's where the nocturnal bats are. So trees that have got damage to them, so maybe lightning strikes occasionally, maybe twists, breaks, fungus as well, and the bats will go in there and roost there. But they also go into the buildings, so we've got a brutalist sort of concrete sort of university here, but those concrete structures have expansion joints that contract and open, and they are perfect little spots for pipistrelle bats to crawl into, etc. So the wildlife is not just over here, it's also integrated into the campus. So.
Everywhere?
Yeah, everywhere. We are a green campus, for sure.
Obviously bats come out at night, but what would be the best time of day if you wanted to sort of see them leaving the roost, for example?
So leaving the roost would be quite difficult, and generally you need a license to do that, so we wouldn't advise people to do that. But flying around, you can see the pipistrelles and nocturnal bats just before dusk, but just after dusk, when it's that kind of what we call civil twilight, kind of where it's kind of murky but not properly dark, is probably your best chance. And by the river. by the river at the lake here, by the river, or by the river in Earliham Park as well. Brilliant places.
So you've talked about obviously the Broad and the river and the lake and the water sources. What other mammals might you find using this space?
So we've got a really interesting system where we used to have lots and lots of mink here. But then a few years ago, 5 years ago, the otters started coming in and they've kind of chased the mink out. So now you can see otter. And I always say that if you walk along the river at dawn, just after dawn, 20 times, you probably will see an otter. So it's that kind of probability of seeing an otter. And they also, with the mink going, it means there's opportunities for other things. And we've now got four different groups of water vole along the river. So there's one place where it's the best place I've ever seen for seeing water voles. You can see them just on the bankside, see their little holes, see them eating their grass that they like. And there's also water shrews there as well. So it really is one of the top places to really get an experience of those rare, hard to see animals.
It's incredible to have this on your doorstep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And of course mink were non-native, weren't they? So it was a really good thing that the otters kind of ousted them, because then it allowed all these other species to increase.
Absolutely. If you get the interaction with a non-native invasive species, you often get these cascade effects that you don't want, where they kill off all the creatures below them, and then when the system balance is restored, you get more of a balance, and that's what we've got now, luckily. So it's good. But mink have a right to live as well as any other animal, so we've got that kind of, there's always debates in ecology, and that's one of those ones where, because the otters actually were probably reintroduced illegally as well, so it's kind of one of these things, but they're native, but they were probably introduced in Suffolk against regulations as well. So interesting things.
Where would be the best place to see an otter around campus?
The very best place, as I say, is walking along the river paths. So there's a couple of paths along the river that goes right from the university village over there, all the way along, all the way down to Cringleford, and just spending some time in the countryside in that green space, looking in the water. You might see a kingfisher as well, you might see a water shrew, and you could see an otter. I mean, it's just a good thing to do, be outside and absorb that green space. And in the morning when the mist is rising off the marsh, it's brilliant.
And of course the fact we have all this wildlife, and particularly otters, is a really good sign, because it hopefully shows us that our rivers and waterways are healthy. Is that right?
More or less, yes. Yeah, it does. I mean, there's certain kind of caveats to that, but yeah, in general, if you've got a top predator, then you've got all the other things that are around there as well. Yeah.
Talking about top predators, I know that we also get foxes and badgers and things like that on campus as well.
So foxes are really, really common around the university halls, so you just have to be lucky. They're also quite commonly seen along Bluebell Road, just outside of the campus, so you can see that. Badgers, we've caught them on camera traps that we put out as part of our students' experience. We've caught them twice now, and they're usually going to be just dispersing females from other populations, so they're not resident here. We have had one resident for 1 year, but then they don't tend to thrive because just because the habitat's not quite right. There's quite a lot of disturbance here. So, but if you want to see predators, there's a friendly stoat that runs around the halls of residence as well. So if you see a kind of an animal about this long with a long tail with a black tip, white sort of throat, that'll be our stoat that comes around, goes around the halls of residence and checks out the rabbit burrows that Diana is going to tell you about. So those are around as well. And of course we've got our squirrels. And one of the kind of interesting sites on campus is along the Chancellor's Drive, you've got all these Turkish hazel trees. And the squirrels come along and in the autumn and they pick up these clumps of hazelnuts, and they're really sticky, and they stick to the squirrel's face, and they kind of running along with this sticky ball of nuts, and they actually sometimes drop them on the road so the buses run over them to actually get access to the food inside rather than having to gnaw through them. So it's quite an interesting kind of adaptation that grey squirrels have learnt here. So
that's absolutely fascinating. That's brilliant. So we want to keep this campus as green and as healthy as possible, so that the students can enjoy it, but importantly the wildlife who live here can keep living here in peace. So what would you recommend that students do to ensure this is possible?
I think there's the standard things like don't drop cans and bottles, and just be mindful of litter, and if you see it, pick it up, because there's been a study in Norfolk of someone that's checked out bottles and cans for the evidence of small mammals like mice, harvest mice, etc., and they find quite a lot enter them because of the sugary treat that's inside, but then can't get out and die there. So just keeping everything tidy is really, really good. Also, just being careful of your food waste as well, because we don't want there to be a plague of rats and house mice, because they invade the native mice here as well. But also, just get out and enjoy it. They're here for you. They're here just to enjoy it. And sitting down on one of these fishing platforms of an evening with a nice tea or whatever is your tipple, and watching the bats fly around is just a treat that every student should engage with, I think.
Absolutely. And if students wanted to learn more, Ian, what would you recommend?
Well, there's a biodiversity audit on the UEA website that we've done in bio, so that gives you a bit more of information. You can also join the Conservation of Wildlife Society, which offers opportunities in the wider area to go out and see the seals at Horsey, to go and do some conservation work on campus, that kind of thing. So they're an amazingly friendly bunch, and they're full of people that have got expertise in all different areas, and they just bring that together. And you can do that, and just get out and enjoy it as well. And if you've got any questions about, I've seen this, I don't know what it is, contact people in bio, and we'll be happy to answer. I love getting those emails, I've seen this bird, it wags its tail, it's bright white and black, what is it, kind of thing. Brilliant, it's really good. So, and we can all kind of learn about what's here together, basically. That's what you're here for. So.
Thank you so much for joining us today and teaching us about some of the just absolutely amazing biodiversity we can find on campus.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So one of the things UEA is particularly famous for is our fantastic population of rabbits. And I'm here today with our resident expert, Professor Diana Bell. Hello, Diana. So how long have you been studying the rabbits here for?
I've been studying them at UEA since I arrived in 1979, but I'd studied them for about 9 years so before then. So I know a lot about rabbits.
And the UEA rabbits. So tell us a bit about what makes the UEA rabbits particularly special.
Well, they've been very well studied by myself, my PhD students, and postdocs over the years, so. Indeed, we've had the longest study of rabbits at the University of East Anglia. What you see now is actually a tiny fragment of the population that we used to have because of new diseases, new viruses that are circulating across the UK. But essentially, we studied their behaviour, we studied their ecology, we studied their social organisation, really complex. We studied their reproduction. They don't reproduce like rabbit. We studied their diseases. We've studied all aspects of the rabbit biology.
Fascinating. So talk us through some of your key findings then from this fantastic long-term study.
Well, first of all, in terms of the social groups, they have small social groups, which are matriarchs essentially. All the adult females are related, so grandmas and great granddaughters living together, and in terms of the offspring, the young females stay on in their warrens of birth, whereas their brothers disperse. So you've got natal dispersal of the brothers, and we know this because we tagged every baby as soon as it came above ground at 3 weeks of age, so that study went on for about 30 years.
Wow, that's an incredible data set. As a scientist, I'm very jealous of that. So we're in front of the ziggurats here, our famous ziggurats, and I know that you see rabbits all around the campus. So if I were to see a population of rabbits here, would they be the same rabbits that I might see by the shop, or would that be a sort of different family?
No, completely. So they are highly territorial.
Wow.
They've got territory boundaries. Even this little area here might be 2 social groups. They scent mark the boundaries. They've got people that have got pet rabbits at home know that rabbits do a lot of chin marking and urine spraying and dropping pellets. We should have a few latrines around here. Anyway, they mark their territory. So these are strictly these rabbits, and they wouldn't have anything to do with the rabbits over there. And they can identify one another by scent, so they'd know that they weren't intruders.
That's really, really interesting to me. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is I've noticed that I tended to see rabbits sort of after most of the students had left. What would be the best time for students to come and see the rabbits?
Well, there are only a few places left on the campus because of these major die-offs. We had the new virus here on campus in 2016, and we went from a good population to 0 in 1 year, and then the same virus came through in 2019. So it's going to be a regular occurrence. We're just looking at the epidemiology of this virus. We're the only people to do that in the UK. And essentially, in these small areas, they're like slopes. So, go to a slope, you know where the slopes are, and probably dusk,
Okay.
Late afternoon. Actually, autumn's not a great time to see them because they're not breeding. They're not as active. Spring's a better time, and also now with climate change, they are breeding throughout the year. So which they didn't before. They had a strict breeding season. So you might see, especially in this month, you might see some September babies, which we wouldn't have seen 10 years ago.
I mean, scientifically, those babies I think you would describe as cute, maybe adorable.
Baby rabbit never ceases to blow me off my feet. No, I love baby rabbits. But we also working on the hair die-off, and these new viruses have jumped from rabbits to hares in Europe and now in North America. So actually, this is if you've got long ears, you're in trouble.
And do we have hair on campus?
No.
So just the rabbits. And if you had to sort of take a guess, how many rabbits would you reckon we have on campus around?
Because it's a burrowing mammal, it's really difficult to say. All you can do, if you want to see if the warren's active, look for some fresh droppings. I mean, if you're in the ziggurats, you can, you've got the luxury of looking out through your window and watching the holes to look for little heads coming out or little ears coming out.
Fantastic. Well, Diana Bell, thank you so much. That's been really interesting and definitely taught me some stuff I had no ideas about our rabbits. So thank you very much.
Well, I hope the students enjoyed the rabbits.